not only are some of your complainers, do they have a point, but they may be speaking on behalf of a number of other employees, and they're not just passing along their instrumental knowledge, the actual what they think, they're passing along a vibe to people as well. And if they're influential, that's causing their vibe to have an impact, a bigger impact on the overall kind of feeling of the company in a particular moment in time, the morale, the cohesion, et cetera, the motivation, commitment. It impacts a lot of things. It's not just fluffy words, it's actual stuff. How hard do people work? How long do they work? How do they persist in the face of obstacles? Very...
Focus.
Yeah.
Ability to focus.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm worried about, am I a chump? Is the company messed up? Or are we okay?
Or I'm getting angry because now I do think the company's messed up.
Right. Sometimes people are upset because they have a point. We've talked about that at great length. Sometimes people are upset and they're just not happy right now in their life. And some of that's bleeding out into the company. And sometimes they're just never going to be happy. And usually you can look at tenure and track record. Okay, this person's not happy. Are they always like this? No, this is new. When did it start? 6 months ago. Okay. How long have they been at the company? 7 years. Okay. And we'll ask point blank, how much longer can you give them? Have you talked to them about it? Yeah. What do they say? Well, they won't open up. Okay. How much longer can you give them? Well, probably another 6 months. Okay. All right. Well, keep an eye on it and talk to them in 2 months and say, hey, like it's going on a year that you haven't been happy. I know you may have things going on. I want to reiterate, how can we help? But we're coming up on a year and this has been impacting the rest of the group. I need this part of your behavior to change. How can I help? Or whatever. And I mean, at some point, this question of are they going to ever be happy again, no matter what you do, is relevant.
Right.
It's a little bit different based on the tolerance of, how much can you tolerate this person? How great have they been before? The particular supervisor we're having this conversation with. But the one thing that you and I try very hard to do is we try to help people not take in the wrong mindset. That we try to help, if you'll let me use the metaphor, we'll try to help the generals not fight the last war. And so there's times when people get ideas in their head like, if we can just have an open and honest conversation, and if I can just provide the right support, this will get better. 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, I agree with that. But a lot of times we're brought in at the point that something might become an edge case or just you've talked to them, you've had a lot of conversations.
And sometimes us coming in as a third party also allows them to open up in a way that they couldn't otherwise.
Yep.
I had the one person who was on call for like 6 months every single day, and their behavior was slipping where like their temper was flaring. They were taking it out on everybody around them. And also like their humor became inappropriate because like the filter was just off. Like,
too tired. To compensate.
Yeah. And that was the organization's fault for having them on for 6 months of call. But most organizations, if you're not communicating that this is a problem, then they look at you and think you've got it. And so that was missing. That this person had a lot of pride and a lot of passion and just didn't want to really address the fact that like this was actually a problem for them to be on call for this amount of time. And so there's that where like sometimes the employees are taking so much responsibility, and this goes with the people who are super committed. They're taking so much responsibility that they are papering over the holes that actually leadership needs to be aware of, because them working that hard is actually making them a worse employee. And so how can we start clawing back your time?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's one of these fire departments we advised was fighting with the association, and it had been going on long enough. It seemed like the association that the president was actually not ever going to be happy. And this leader that we were advising was a very kind of people-centric, great with people, kind of had this ethos and this core belief of, I put my head together. I put my head together man to man. We can figure almost anything out. We don't have to, I've solved hard problems before and I can figure out how to work with, and he had this, and I felt like it was my job to say, this guy's eating your lunch because you're fighting the last war. And in all the other instances, that's work for you. And here, it doesn't. You're actually dealing with somebody who's never going to be happy. And you need to change your approach. It was gentle. It took a while. But I'm asking you to come to a very difficult conclusion that the tools you have that in part have made you who you are won't work here. Mm-hmm. And that you're going to need a different approach.
For that particular person.
Yep. And that's very hard. Marshall Goldsmith famously to us anyway, in Nerdland, wrote a book years ago called What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
It's a good book.
Changing something that you've been doing.
Well, you've got a lot of evidence that it works. And actually, in your example, that's probably still going to work in most cases.
Yep.
He just is up against somebody who it's not working on.
Yeah, fighting the last war. And that's the hard part of the small percentage of complainers. I think I've arrived at a place in my life and in our work where I value most complaints as a sign of organizational health.
I've always looked at complaints like they're opportunities to get better.
Yep. What else you want to talk about?
So what do we want to ask them? If we're wrapping up, what are we asking them in the comments?
Best complaint you ever got. What is the best complaint you ever got?
Okay.
I mean, I think about a bunch. I shared this in my first book. I used a word, I called myself years ago, socially retarded. And a student, I did that. This is a long time ago. I mean, I know, wake up nerds. I know you just heard the R word, but the year was probably 2001. And I was a graduate student, and I gave a lecture to a big classroom, to John Daly's big class. And just as part of describing myself, I called myself socially retarded. And just, went on. It was an hour and some minutes. And at the end of it, I got a note from a student on the way out. And after everybody had left, I read it. And she's like, hey, just so you know, my sister is actually retarded. And you might want to bring your vocabulary up into the 21st century. And I was like, you're right. You're right. And I've never used that word in any context other than I told the story in the book. I just told the story here. But that was a complaint that it was more like a piece of feedback, but in a way it was kind of a complaint. As a complaint,
yeah. I mean, I consider complaints feedback.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're being brought out for a good reason, not just because a person's a complainer, embedded in that is feedback.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, and my mom complained when I grew my hair out long and my aunt put it in a ponytail. What did she say? I hate this. Do you remember?
I do remember, but your mother has some reactions to things. When he told his mother that he was not going to be eating sugar, she acted like he had just announced he'd taken up heroin.
That's right.
She was like, you can tell no one.
I drank all through my 20s and nobody had any comment. And then I give up sugar when I'm 40. And there was an intervention.
You cannot tell anybody this.
Do not tell anybody. Don't tell anybody you're giving up sugar.